Hello and welcome back to ARAH, the G.I. Joe Real American Hero Costume Club YouTube channel. I'm your host and I'm your founder, Wild Bill Hardy. In the last video, I just did the introduction and defined what member in good standing really means for this Article 9 disciplinary action. So this video is going to be devoted to conduct unbecoming of a Joe, and it's pretty extensive, and I'm going to try to burn through it because, well, I have my nachos sitting here and I'm just hungry. And my time is limited to get to work, so without further ado, here we go. Conduct unbecoming of a Joe is a charge placed against a member when they have violated the rules of the club. Any active member of the G.I. Joe Real American Hero Costume Club may bring this charge against a fellow member or officer should the need arise. And that should just go without saying. There's a singular charge in this club, and it covers all wrongdoing, right? It's the singular charge of conduct unbecoming of a Joe is what you're charged with when you violated club rules. And it doesn't matter whether it's a recasting rule, a theft rule, an assault rule, swearing, using that as an example as a minor infraction, but it's all conduct unbecoming, right? So depending on the severity of and nature of the infraction / violation, that is what determines whether it stays local level or it gets kicked up to us. Okay. If a member needs to lodge a complaint, they are to send their complaint, including all accounts of misconduct and other evidence, to the team leader for review. That's if you have a team. Otherwise, you send it to the sector command first sergeant. Team leader will then forward the evidence to the sector command first sergeant. For minor infractions, the team leader can impose sanctions appropriate to the violation. Examples include having a member removed from an event for using foul language. In the event that a team leader has to take action, they are to document the incident, forward all evidence and the sanctions taken to the sector command first sergeant. Sector command first sergeant will review the action and forward said action upon approval of actions taken to the sector command personnel officer for proper documentation of the offending party's membership file. So what I was thinking about that in hindsight, what I was thinking was the thought behind that is that we would have like a dossier for every member, and think of it as like your service file. If any of you are veterans, you understand that like your service file has like everything in it, right? Has all the awards you were given in your time in service, where you were deployed in your time of service, and any disciplinary actions you got while in time of service. And that's all part of your file, right? I had a big grandiose plan that's what we were going to do here. And but it never really took off. But I mean, I leave that in there because I reserve the right to pick that up at a later date down the line. Okay. So should the violation be such that it warrants a court-martial, the sector command first sergeant will bring charges to the top brass of an investigation, and an investigation will begin. If there is enough evidence to bring charges against the offending party, the top brass will initiate a court-martial proceedings against the accused. Now, and this applies to both at the corporate level and the local level. So I'm going to try to, save a little bit of time here by reading this. So this applies to both the team leader as well as any sector command officer. But the policy is the same for both team leader and sector command officer because they're very similar, and I don't feel the need to repeat the same thing, even though it applies all the way around. So should a team leader or sector command officer be found guilty, I'm getting ahead of myself. Should they need to be relieved of command, the conduct unbecoming of a Joe is the charge that's filed with the first sergeant for review. It requires complaint of two or more members are required to press that charge, right? So, and the reason being is that, if you have someone you don't like and they're in charge, this is to avoid all the petty stuff, right? It's to avoid, a petty means of getting rid of someone you don't like. So if there's any legitimate wrongdoing, I need 2 or more members to come up and say, this is what they're doing wrong. And then it'll be evaluated. And it'll be brought to the top brass for review. And should it warrant a court-martial, the team leader or the sector command officer, any of those officers really, they will be relieved of duty temporarily. And in the case of the team leader, it's the sector command first sergeant who will assume command of that team until the court-martial is concluded. And the reason why is, like, I didn't want to elevate an assistant team leader into the position only to take it away from him if the team leader got exonerated. So the sector command first sergeant takes over as interim until it's concluded. And if that sector command first sergeant is unable or unwilling, then, we'll find someone else to do it, I suppose. But charter speaking, sector command first sergeant takes over as an interim, and then until it's concluded. Now, if the team leader is convicted, right, if is found guilty, he's removed of office, because he's no longer a member in good standing, and he serves out his sentence, whatever that sentence may be. He is not eligible to run for re-election. He is not eligible to hold office. He or she they're not eligible to hold office until they are a member in good standing again. This is the same across the board for anybody who holds position. Once the team leader or corporately the sector command officer is removed, then the assistant or corporately the executive officer is moved into that position. And then they go from there. So bearing in mind that, again, anytime there is a complaint against an officer, it requires 2 or more people to file that complaint. Think of it this way. It's basically like a vote of no confidence. If you're familiar with that term from the Star Wars clubs, it's a vote of no confidence. And that's what you're doing to remove that person from office. And I'm going to skip ahead here, and I'm going to say in a year, if there's 3 attempts at conduct unbecoming, and say that leader is exonerated all 3 times, no more attempts are allowed. At that point, it looks like it's harassment of, on that leader, and I'm not going to have that. Okay, so all documented accounts of this charge should be presented to the officer for review. In this case, whether it's the first sergeant, or if it's the first sergeant, right? Then you kick that up to the club CO, and then we do that process all over again. And at the corporate level, should it be where one of those officers are needing to be replaced, in a perfect world, it would be one of the co-founders or the club advisors that would be the interim. But since both of our co-founders have since, years ago, they both since stepped down, and we have no club founder or club advisors as of this recording, April 3rd, 2024, well, that's going to fall on me to do that, and I'll do it. So in the case of a subordinate officer in the sector command, they need to be replaced. Like, I'm not reading the whole thing because it's just too long, and I'm getting on 10 minutes already. If it's one of the other sector command officers that have been replaced, the sector command officer, the CO will choose a new replacement, and then that replacement will be taken to, will be submitted to the top brass. Think of it as like a congressional hearing. confirmation hearing, for judges or whatever, it's kind of the same process there, is that they will vote, the top brass will vote on whether or not that person's going to hold that position for the remainder of that term. Okay. Of course, all members who are brought up on charges and are found guilty, they do have the option to appeal. That is one of their rights. Final review of said actions will be for the club founder, because again, I have no other founders and no other advisors to do the appeals. So the final words, it stops with me. Now, obviously, if I'm the prosecutor like I was when we did ban that one member all those years ago, I couldn't exactly be the appeals officer either. So I had to dole that out to somebody else. But he never appealed, and I gave him a caveat. I gave him a year to, like, I basically said that his ban would be permanent after a year if he didn't follow through with fixing the issue. And he chose to never follow through. So that's why he earned a permanent ban, and we never spoke again. I mean, all individual members who are brought up on charges, I mean, if the individual members who are brought up on charges of conduct unbecoming, there will be no concessions made. Rather, each separate charge of conduct unbecoming will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis for members. Yeah, there is a little bit of a difference in policy between officers and rank and file, right? Rank and file, you don't have the scrutiny of having leadership, and so the leaders are held to a higher standard. So we, all concessions are taken into consideration, the reasons, the hows, the what's, the whys, what have you, when it comes to adjudicating and determining an appropriate punishment. But and it's all case by case. So at any rate, I kind of breezed through this, but the charter is available to read through on the Facebook page. I mean, go to the files section. It's right there. And you can read through this stuff yourself. This is the first time in this whole charter video series that I really glossed over a lot. But I think I've covered everything. But again, comments, questions, concerns, drop them in the comments section and I'll address them. But yeah, it's basically, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. You screw up, you're going to get sanctioned. And there's a process for that sanctioning, and I think I've made that pretty well clear. Officers, you're going to be held to a higher standard. Officers require 2 or more witnesses. That rule isn't really, it should be universal, but I mean, it really wasn't. I mean, I didn't really, think to like add that in when it came to charges being brought up against an individual, because it's going to get investigated. But realistically, for leadership roles, it requires 2 or more, because we're essentially talking about a vote of no confidence, really. So, I mean, and I do that, like I said, to ensure that, like, it's not a witch hunt. It's not a political witch hunt just to get rid of some guy because you don't like him. That's, if he or she are doing their job, I mean, if they're doing their job, then there's no reason for a conduct unbecoming. And if you're abusing conduct unbecoming, well, we're going to have a chat with you about that. And there may be some disciplinary action coming down your way. So don't be like that. Okay. In the next section, we're going to talk about disciplinary action and then go through the remainder of the series. All right, so with that, like I said, as always, comments, questions, concerns, drop them below, and I'll get to them and address them. Yojo, Cobra, known as half the battle. I'm going to finish this nacho and go to work. So you have a great day. Talk to you later.